Hello, and you're very welcome to this episode of the AgriFocus podcast from Agriland that takes a closer look at the issues that matter most to farmers across the country. I'm Frances McDonnell, and today we're going to be chatting about the Agri-Climate Rural Environment Scheme, or as we all know it, ACRES. And joining me today as we take a closer look at some aspects of ACRES is Fergal Monaghan, who's the Programme Director for ACRES Breifne, Leinster and Munster South Connaught regions. Fergal has 25 years experience in the agri-environment sector, including 20 years as a farm advisor, working with farmers in high nature value areas throughout Ireland. Fergal, thank you for joining us today on the AgriFocus podcast.
You're welcome, Frances.
Now, it's fair to say that the €1.5 billion flagship agri-environmental scheme has not exactly been plain sailing for either the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine or for some farmers. There have been many challenges, and I know in some parts of the country, given the rainfall of recent days, the warm, dry weather at the start of April may seem like just a distant memory. But we did see some widespread, devastating wildfires across the country at the beginning of the month. And Fergal, the fallout from those wildfires could mean another fresh challenge for some farmers in ACRES. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, if we look at the wildfire issue, the peak risk period for us is in February to early May. The impacts are devastating, not just on farmers. They're devastating to wildlife, particularly ground nesting birds and reptiles. But they also have long-term consequences in terms of their impact on vegetation and indeed on the risk of further fires in future years. So I think what we have to look at here is the potential to help farmers increase the resilience of their farmland, the ability of the land and the vegetation on it to resist these large-scale wildfires such as we've seen in the past.
And just sort of going back, how many farmers would you be working with in your particular area?
Across the three CP regions that our company supports, we deal with about 7,500 farmers. Most of those would have uplands that are vulnerable to wildfire. So it is a really important issue for us to support those farmers.
And the feedback that you got from farmers, what supports are now in place, or where can they turn to if they've been concerned about the impact of the wildfires?
Well, over the next couple of months, the Department of Agriculture will be launching a wide suite of landscape actions, and some of these will help increase wildfire resilience and reduce the risk of future fires. And of course, farmers also have access to non-productive investments, which could support them with the replacement of fire-damaged infrastructure, such as fencing or water troughs. This is really important because one of the most important things that farmers can do to reduce wildfire risk is to ensure that the lands in question are grazed. And obviously, if we lose essential infrastructure like fencing, it makes that job harder in the future and increases the risk of further fires. So if a farmer has been affected by wildfire, what I would ask them in the first instance to do is to engage with their advisor and with the local CP team. ACRES does have the funding and the mechanisms to assist them.
Okay, and so let's just sort of chat about what you saw on the ground whenever we were in the spate of these wildfires.
Well, most of the wildfires that we see in Ireland, the primary fuel that these wildfires are consuming is dead grass, specifically purple moorgrass, or sometimes called millennia, which is a fast-growing grass that can come to dominate peatlands. It's a deciduous grass. It dies off in the autumn. And if we get the right weather conditions, if we've particularly high-pressure areas over the North Sea, it can bring warm, dry air from the continent and dry this grass out to tinder in a couple of days. And that's typically what we see, that millennia provides the fuel. The resultant fires can spread very, very quickly. Most of the ignitions are roadside or areas that people can access easily. And as I said, the peak risk is in this spring, early summer period.
And would have many of the participants been impacted in the last spate of fires there at the beginning of the month?
Uh, Not as much as in, I would say, as in previous years. We did a lot of the areas affected are commonages. So in terms of the number of people affected, it would depend to an extent on the number of shareholders involved. I think we were fortunate that we had a break in the weather before Easter, and that the risk has been negated now for the next couple of weeks at least. Once we get into May, the sites will start to green up naturally, and the risk would tend to reduce through the month. So we've been kind of saved by the change in weather conditions.
Yeah, and what are you sort of asking farmers to go out and look at and do now as immediate urgency?
Well, I think farmers that have land that has been affected by fires, or that they feel is at risk from fires in the future, should engage with their local CP team. We do have a number of landscape actions that will be coming on stream over the next couple of months. And these do include provision and support for the post-fire control of Millennia or purple moorgrass. They provide support for targeted grazing, focus on grazing of cattle on Millennia or horses on gorse. There'll be support for virtual fencing to enable farmers to keep cattle on uplands, keep them safely, stop them wandering onto public roads or traveling into forestry. So these tools will be available to farmers, and the CP teams would be very happy to develop landscape action plans to support farmers in those situations.
Yeah. I know in Agriland that from time to time we've covered a lot of the negative feedback from farmers about the acres, but you're on the ground with farmers, and why is it a scheme that's worth sticking with from a farmer's perspective?
Well, look, you're correct there, Francis. There's no doubt that the scheme has had its challenges, but I believe we are rounding a corner, and the rollout of the landscape actions will see the scheme move a lot closer towards achieving its potential. We have a lot of environmental challenges in Ireland. Farmers will face a lot of challenges in the future. We've focused on one here today about the risk from wildfires, but we have other threats as well in relation to water quality, in relation to invasive species, and a kind of a targeted scheme like ACRES is really the only way ahead. The schemes, kind of broad spectrum schemes we had in the past, just will be unable to focus on these challenges in the way that's required.
And tell us a little bit more about some of the more positive impacts that you've seen in action.
Well, I think the most positive impact we've seen is that we've had thousands of farmers have voluntarily engaged with the non-productive investment process. Farmers have submitted applications for over 93,000 NPIs in 2 windows. The vast majority of them pass screening, and many of these will enable farmers to deliver ecosystem services, or will give direct benefits for wildlife and water quality. So I think that's very encouraging, that so many farmers working with their advisors have identified issues on their farms and are seeking support to deliver solutions.
And that is a fundamental issue, isn't it? Because farmers do make the decisions for their own farms.
Yeah, ACRES and every aspect of ACRES is a voluntary scheme, and that's the way it should be. Farmers, it's their land, it's their enterprise. They know it better than anyone else, and they're the only people that are practically in a position to deliver the improvements that we require. So it's the role of a scheme like ACRES to provide the necessary supports. It's the role of the CP teams and farm advisors to help farmers make informed decisions and to help them with technical support and training.
And what's the element of feedback that you've been receiving? You know that we've talked about there are challenges, but overwhelmingly, and the farmers that we talk to always want to leave their land in a better place than what they received it from the generation before them. So do you get that very strong message coming through with this scheme too?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about it that, farmers, most farmland in Ireland has been in the same families for generations. Farmers seen the improvements that their parents and grandparents made on the land, and the vast bulk of farmers would like to see the lands go on to the next generation in their family and to hand them on, in a better way than they themselves received it. So, there's absolutely no doubt about that. I think that's culturally very ingrained in the farming community.
And your project team is obviously on hand to support farmers at every step of the way.
Yeah, the team is there to, as I said, to help farmers make informed decisions about what's available, what supports are available within the scheme. And it's also there to help them with practical issues, technical issues in respect of the delivery of the various supports that are available to them.
And how important is that community network when it comes to acres?
Well, if we look at a lot of the issues we have, if we look at water quality, one of the things that when I was a farm advisor that I came across time and time again was that people wondered what was the point in them making improvements if there was other activities, whether on farmland or forestry or urban wastewater, upstream from them, that their efforts wouldn't be rewarded through an improvement in water quality. And that's very, very valid concern. So I think one of the things that we can do within ACRES is to try and focus action locally. So if we have a problem with invasive species or water quality, to try and get that critical mass of farmers in the affected area to work on their own farms, but work together towards addressing those issues in their locality. And I think our experience in the Hen Harrier project was that that will that exists, and people want to do the right thing.
Yeah, and that's one of the, I know we've talked about the threat of wildfires, but one of the other key issues that I see you've been chatting about is the fact that we're now in springtime ground nesting birds and breeding season. And that's a key issue, isn't it, too, whenever we talk about acres?
It is, yeah, and this is a very important time for a lot of our ground nesting birds, for hen harrier, for waders like curlew, for red grouse, for smaller birds like meadow pipits. Uh, these birds are nesting at the moment, or in some cases will be laying over the next couple of weeks. They're very vulnerable to wildfires. Generally, they're very vulnerable to predation. Um, they can be very vulnerable to disturbance. So, we would ask everyone who uses upland areas in any capacity to be cognizant of that, to reduce the risk of disturbance to the maximum. Try and keep, certainly for recreational users, don't bring dogs into the uplands, don't light fires, don't stray from paths. For farmers and foresters, try and keep the use of machinery, for this month and next month in particular, to a minimum in upland areas. I think most people, whatever their background, want to do the right thing. So it's very important for the ACRES teams and others to show them what's possible, and to give them simple advice on achievable things that can make a difference.
And it is a kind of timely reminder, isn't it? For whenever you talk about recreational activities. I was out walking over the weekend. I saw someone with their dogs off leads. There were signs up advising people, that there are nesting birds in the area, but they didn't seem to take it on board. So, do you feel sometimes there's maybe a bit of a distance between people who are working the land and people who are visiting the land?
Well, like it or not, we're largely an urban country now, and the link between most people and the land is becoming a little more distant. But I still firmly believe that most people, irrespective of where they're from, want to do the right thing. In relation to dogs, look, there's no excuse for bringing dogs, whether on leads or not, into the uplands, particularly in spring. They pose a direct risk to wildlife. They don't have to catch a bird to stop it, to disrupt its nesting. The disturbance alone can cause birds to abandon nests. They're a threat to sheep, and we've seen some very unfortunate incidents in recent weeks. I have a dog. I think she's great. I don't bring her to visit farms. I don't bring her to the uplands. The only dogs that really should be there are working dogs, particularly farmers' sheepdogs, and everybody else should leave the dog at home.
Yeah. I know you've many years experience. We were saying at the top of the program, you've 25 years experience in the agri-environment sector. Over that time, you must have seen a huge change and reflection, particularly with regards to our different weather patterns. But when you talk to farmers, what's the feedback that you're getting now? Is it more difficult? Are these kind of schemes, the acre schemes, are they welcome from a sort of where the direction is going in farming?
Well, I think ACRES was very well received by the farming community, and it certainly was oversubscribed. It's unfortunate that some of the rollout wasn't as smooth as we would have hoped. But I think farmers they want three things. I think out of an agri-environment scheme, and they want to be they want to be assured that the work that we're asking them to do makes a difference. Farmers, just like the rest of us, don't want, they've no interest in busy work. They want to know that what we're asking them to do has a purpose and can achieve something. They want to know that what they're being asked to do in a scheme is achievable and practical, and that their concerns have been taken into account in the design process. And they want to be fairly rewarded for the work that they're doing and the benefits that work delivers. There are three honest and simple requirements, and the onus is on the people who design and run agri-environment schemes to make sure that we can deliver those three things to farmers. If we can, I believe farmers will deliver in spades.
And what do you think works particularly well on the acres front?
Well, I think there's two things that have been revolutionary in ACRES, and I think they'll stand us in the future. One was the ability to score tens of thousands of fields and identify at field level what the issues are. And the second has been the development of a partially automated screening system for the non-productive investments. I think that's been a big success. We've had 93,000 actions screened. In the second window for NPIs, there was 48,000 actions screened in 3 months. Screening had the potential to completely cripple schemes, and some other programs have suffered badly through not been able to deliver on that front. I think ACRES has made a huge jump forward in relation to that will help ensure that actions on farms in the future don't carry risks of negative unintended consequences, and can be in compliance with all legal requirements. So I think those two things have been a big success. We've had more than our share of failures, in particular in relation to the rollout of payments and landscape actions. But as I said, I think the end is in sight there, and that we're close to rounding a corner.
And just on the wildfires earlier this month, will that have an impact on scorecards?
It will, unfortunately. Most of these wildfires are on land that would have been classed as peatlands for the purpose of acres. So if there was a fire in the current year, that will impact directly on the score. In the medium term, if the fire was very extensive, it could hit scores for habitat structure as well. So look, I think wildfires are one thing that virtually every sector of society can agree on the necessity to deal with. Wildfires are not in a farmer's interest. They're not in a forester's interest. They're not in the local authority or the fire services interest, and they're not in they're not something that the general public or the have any interest in either. So look, I think it is one thing that we can all agree on, and we can all work together on, is that we have to increase resilience and we have to ensure that there's less fires and that the recovery after fires doesn't set us up for further fires down the road.
And that's really a community effort, isn't it? Obviously, there's individual actions that farmers can take, but it's really community based.
It is. I wouldn't lose sight of the importance of the individual, but at a landscape, fires are no respecters of have no respect for boundaries between farms or boundaries between farms and other lands. So all of us that are working in that space, whether they're farmers or fire service professionals or foresters, all have a shared interest in reducing the impact and the vulnerability to future wildfires. There's a lot we can do, and there's a lot we should do. And I think ACRES in the coming years will be able to support farmers with a lot of the works that can make a real difference to the resilience of their lands to wildfires.
Well, ACRES is a subject, as you know only too well, Fergal, that a lot of farmers have very strong opinions on, and the debate around it is likely to continue. But for now, I'd just like to thank you, Fergal Monaghan, Programme Director for ACRES Breifne, Leinster and Munster, South Connaught regions, for joining us today. Thanks for listening, and please don't forget to rate, review the AgriFocus podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast.